Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the season finale of Entertainment Roundup. I'm J77, and there is no stories here. There is nothing that I'm going to be reporting in the movie world or the acting world or the sports world. These stories pretty much goes from my past. Like I did with the first part of the video, I have talked briefly about some of the events that has happened that affected me, affected my culture in terms of entertainment. I started with some of the music that I talked about. Now, this video here is going to be completely dedicated to the pop culture that I have followed through the past and even today. And I pretty much will kick it off with some of the stuff that I consider to be. How can I say, for better words, soap opera. There was a whole lot of these stories, these current events that happened. The Woody Allen, Neil Farrell thing has became pretty much the talk of the town during that time between him, his ex-wife, and their adopted daughter. These are some of the stuff, one of many stories that happened, but I'm gonna go by the ones that actually is entertainment, but not really entertainment, but became such a big topic, such an important one, to be exact, that it basically passed as entertainment in terms of the Inquiring Minds tabloids. And believe me when I say this was something that was on all the time, something that a lot of people had heated debate, heated discussions with. So let's get started. I might as well talk about one of my earlier stories. These actually came out at the same year, and it really flooded the headlines for quite some time, and still is in many ways. It still is a talk of the town, depending on which article you guys seem to focus enough with. Let me start off with the Tanya Hardy Nancy Kerrigan story. This was something that my junior high school was talking about, my teachers was talking about, and it was something that only you will find in All My Children. That's how crazy this story was. But basically, to make things short, um, there were two rivals, Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Hardy, and these two rivals competing in the Olympics at the time. And needless to say, one was worried for the other, basically being better than them. There was a bit of jealousy, and what ended up happening made for for crazy tabloids and crazy stories throughout even the Olympics and beyond. But to simply put, Tanya Hardy has set up a plot to take Nancy Kerrigan out of the picture in the Olympics. He basically attacked at her knees, injured her, didn't break anything, thank goodness, but definitely was one of those crazy stories. The camera was on her. She was crying in pain, basically saying, "Why me? Why this had to happen?" And we didn't, and at first, no one knew what had happened until it was revealed that her rival set up the whole thing. In fact, it just led to one big domino effect after another. We found out that she was even betrayed by the people who they arranged to take out. Nancy Kerrigan. It was very very crazy, and in the end, after the investigation has happened, and after they have competed, she didn't come close to competing. She was pretty much out of the race to begin with. But when they first came in the ring at the same time, you can feel the ice cold vibrations they both had. Even the picture showing them together, they wasn't looking at each other. They both had their backs to each other, and you can tell there's a whole lot of bad blood there. Amazingly, how Nancy Kerrigan actually was able to overcome that. Actually, didn't suffer any permanent injuries or career-ending injuries from that, but she managed to rise up and compete. I believe she won the silver medal after that, but nothing compared to what Tanya Hardy was going through, and rightfully so, because she tried to take out the competition in the most despicable way, and this led to a whole lot of stuff. This led to even some of the people that was involved with betraying her. I believe some of them that spent time in prison. She eventually got banned from the Olympic Committee. She's never again to skate in the ring, but from that time from the Olympics all the way through the time afterwards, this story really must fill the entertainment airways for quite some time. It was very, very unique and very crazy. And again, when you hear the story, you're like, This is only in soap operas you hear something like this. You never thought there'd actually be someone who actually would do this in real life. That's how crazy it is. Because you know how you hear soap operas, they always want to plan something because they're mad at this person, jealous person, they want to take them out of the picture. That's exactly how this story was. From what I last remember, I don't know what happened to Nancy Kerrick. I know she competed a few more times. She did a lot of special event skating competition with some other skaters, but I didn't really know what happened after that. If anyone has any links to the story, I'd like to know. I haven't really followed up on her, but what I do know is that Tonya Harding have rebuilt her life after that. She's nothing compared to what she once were. She's actually, from what I understand, became a wrestler at some independent circuit, and when I last saw the picture, she's hardly even recognizable. So, at least for one thing, she did manage to rebuild her life after that. But in terms of her skating career, yeah, it was pretty much over after that. The committee disbanded her, and a whole lot of acts went down after that. I don't know what went to her mind when she did that. I just know it was like one of the craziest things. And yeah, for those in my class who didn't care nothing about figure skating. We see it on TV every now and then, but we never really talk about it. We don't talk about like baseball, basketball. We talked about it a lot during that year, and we actually sat down and watched some of the competition. And you know what? It's not as easy as it looks, and it's definitely more entertaining than what we give credit for. So if anything, we got something out of that. But it was one of those stories that just residents throughout the entire entertainment world. It was something that actually shocked everyone, including the Olympics, which has no tolerance for scandals. They really, really don't. So that was one of the stories that made for soap operas headline news. And here's another one that made a soap opera headline news: the Amy Fisher Joey Buttafuoco situation, that scandal. There's a reason why I'm putting it as an entertainment roundup more than anything else, but let me explain here. Just pretty much in a brief case, Amy Fisher, which was known as the Lolita of Long Island, New York state for that matter, had an affair with with Joey Buttafuoco. Keep in mind that Amy Fisher was underage at the time, and Joey pretty much was also married with his wife. Amy Fisher shot his wife in the face. This triggered a very serious trial, a very intense trial. A lot of people in my class, and I say this because I was still in junior high school at the time, and this actually came out almost the same time as this true story I just mentioned, was talking about, debating about it, is she going to get off, is she not going to get off. Even I was debating whether she was going to get off or not, especially after hearing the story and after what the media was depicting. In short, she was convicted of, I believe, attempted murder. She was given time, and as well as Joey Buttafuoco, but not as much as Amy Fisher for statutory rape. Now, why am I bringing this up as an entertainment story when there's really no entertainment value here? Because of this reason. When I saw the story, I was disgusted by the media for doing one thing. At the same time, disgusted by how they made Joey Buttafuoco a star. This man had gotten movie deals. Granted, it didn't last long, but he still got movie deals. They still treated this man as a hero, and that was disgusted me the most, because his actions set the course of what has happened to his wife, and yet people seem to ignore that. It wasn't until after his second conviction, he was caught with a prostitute, that people started to realize this guy is not a nice guy. This guy is a slimeball, but they really did treat him like he was some kind of hero, and that really bothered me a lot, especially how the media has to provide pretty much how they projected Amy Fisher. And before I go any further, I'm not at all condoning what she has done. She has committed a crime. She has committed a horrible crime, and she has served time for that. And even when she was at time for it, I think that she was in denial that what she was doing was wrong. She's gotten bad advice from other people, and in the end, once it sunk in, when she was in that prison, she realized what she has done, and she realized that hey, this is serious. Um, People can change when they're behind those cells and their freedom is taken away from it. But in any case, there was a lot of animosity between her and Joey Buttafuoco. But Buttafuoco didn't want her out. Period. She should have stayed there. She should have been there. But here's the thing that killed me though is that the media went beyond way beyond the line in terms of trying to humiliate Amy Fisher. I'll never forget this. I was sitting on the couch with my foster parents at the time, and we was watching the news coverage, and for reasons I still don't know, thought it was a good idea, thought it was his best to go to a high school. This was news reporters, and not only talk about Amy Fisher's why she was involved in this, but actually show the tape of her engaging in sexual activity with other people to teenagers in high school. Just showing them the tape, and I'm like, why are you doing this? What's the purpose of this? And this is where I really realized and opened my eyes that these guys are just looking to bury this person, not just basically tell the news. And it was disgusting journalism, and I don't condone that at all. I thought that was out of line, unprofessional, and just downright wrong. But besides all that, besides the conviction, Joey Buttafuoco was treated like a man that didn't do anything wrong, and that really bothered me. Even after the courts went after him, he was given pretty much almost a slap in the wrist. He got out very quickly. He was greeted by a lot of people, and then all of a sudden you hear these movie deals being done. He was involved in a couple of movies in time. You can actually look his movie list long. It's very short, so you can't miss it. But I'm like, we're actually rewarding this guy for having an affair with a teenage girl, pretty much manipulating this teenage girl to the point where her mind was so distorted. And we're giving this man a movie deal. We're treating this guy as a hero. And again, it wasn't until after he got caught again, this time, what I believe, with a hooker, and that people didn't give him that royal treatment. In fact, that was the straw that broke their marriage back, because his wife realized that this guy is not what he says seems to is, and I think they got divorced right after. She have actually forgave Amy Fisher and actually requested that she be released on parole, which infuriated Joey Buttafuoco. But I'm saying, you're mad. Look what you have done. And that was the whole thing that really, really bothered me about this. It has been for a while since we heard about Amy Fisher and Joey Buttafuoco. From what I remember, she's doing fine now. She's a family. She's a mother. She's doing very well. At one point, she was actually an editor of some newspaper, so she's actually have rebuilt her life. The same thing with Buttafuoco. He has also rebuilt his life in some way as well. But this was a story that really irks me in so many levels, and this shows how sometimes we are biased about certain things. Again, he was made into a celebrity where I just couldn't fathom why, especially after you see this report. It was clearly that this guy was just as fault for his wife being shot than anything else. He may not have the gun, he may not have pulled the trigger, but he was just as much as fault than anything else. And it just really bothers me of how they praise him and they demonize Amy Fisher. And they really made him a celebrity, and I just couldn't understand how's that possible. Another person that was made into celebrity, which I think no one should be surprised of, was the Monica Lewinsky situation. Man, my goodness, was the stuff that went on with her and President Clinton, pretty much almost bringing down President Clinton, was just that was soap operas in a half show. And the thing that really hurt Clinton is that he didn't came forward. He didn't came right in saying that he had an affair with Monica Lewinsky, which he lied on the oath. That's basically what he did. And but the thing that's strange is after everything cooled down, you start to see Monica Lewinsky go on television on getting these huge deals, and I'm like wondering why. Because she slept with the president, we all of a sudden going to give her endorsements? That was one of the lesser of the three that I talk about, because no sooner after all that thing dies down, you haven't really heard from much again. And even some of the people closer said that it was the biggest regret she ever had, because for what I understand, getting another position anywhere has been proving more difficulty because of what has happened. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe that she is doing fine. I don't know. But this is one of the things that I scratch my head a lot when it comes to these kind of scandals. Since we reward certain scandals for whatever reason, we seem to do that a lot in this country. Monica Lewinsky was, keep in mind, she was on a high horse after that whole thing blew up. She had TV shows, she was doing other, God knows, other interviews and book deals. She was doing all sorts of things. I'm like, why? Because she slept with the president? Because she had an affair with the man? I mean, that just I just can't fathom. I just don't understand that. But it didn't last long, I'll tell you that. She quickly disappeared into obscurity. And again, the only time I heard from her since then was the fact that there was talk that she was having a more difficult time than one may actually believe. But those are the three ones that actually really caught my attention a lot more. Again, Michael Jackson is also one of them. My. That was probably the most painful. As a Jackson fan, that was probably the most painful situation that he had to go through. The child molestation charges that he was going through, all the stories that was going out, the media attacking him left and right, which they were. I think the one thing that hurt Michael Jackson the most, and still did until the day he died, God rest his soul, was the fact is that people couldn't fathom why he felt he needed to pay off the children's family. And the reason is if you're not guilty, and this is something that everybody said, if you're not guilty, you should fight. You should continue fighting. Go to court. Go to trial. And people just say, wait a minute, you said you're not guilty, but yet you pay this family a certain amount of money just to let this go away. So either that gives an automatic impression that you are guilty, and you just don't want to risk being exposed when it comes to trial. This really, and anything else, hurt his reputation more than I think what many people tend to believe. I think his advisors really should have said go to trial, but they didn't. He paid it off, and to be surprised enough, the police department didn't get off fairly either, because the police department dropped the case after that. The district attorney dropped the case, and people was enraged. That wasn't an opportunity for them to really go after him, but they didn't do that. They dropped the case, and they're saying, how can you drop a case about something this serious? And I believe when the second trial came on, even if he was to pay them off, which I don't think he was, they couldn't just let that slide. They had to go pursue criminal charges. They wasn't going to get away with it twice. So that was the whole thing about that case. It was more on the fact is that you had an allegation that was poorly handled in all directions. The police poorly handled it. Michael Jackson poorly handled it with the way he bought off the family, and how the DEA decided we're just going to drop it. He paid them off. That was it. These were three things that just reek of disaster altogether. Jackson's career was very much badly damaged after that. He had a hard time selling albums, and he had a hard time getting producers to help produce his work. It was very, very tough. It was very, very tough. And the only thing I can say about it is that at least he had his own studio where he didn't have to worry about all the other annex. Otherwise, who knows just how much he would have been dropped. He'd been dropped by Pepsi. He was dropped by, I believe, Universal Studios. So he has been badly damaged, and throughout most of the entertainment world. The only thing he really had left after that was the music. After that, other than that, there was nothing. Keep in mind, during the '80s, he was on top of the world. He had Pepsi commercials. He had an attraction in the Universal Studios. He had a whole bunch of endorsements, and that pretty much almost all went away within this one allegation. And that was pretty much because he basically bought off the family who made those allegations of what he did, and things didn't get any better after in the 90s, even in the 2000s. It was not a very, very pleasant final years for MJ. I was actually hoping he did make a comeback, but when you look at his resume, I'll give him his due. He is the great of his business, but it doesn't mean that he lived a very complex, very weird, and very sad life. When you look at it, look, he was a perfectionist. I always said that he's a guy who had passion for this music, but there was just some things that made people scratch their heads, and those was one of those things. All right, we went from tabloid news that pretty much shocked the world, at least from my point of view, to some very sad deaths that I had to uh, that shook me and shook a lot of people for that matter. And I might as well start off with my childhood. There was a couple of deaths that affected my family a lot with their famous stars. For my grandmother was Sammy Davis Jr. She was a person who followed him a lot in his career from the Rat Pack all the way to now, at least until she was alive. She really loved his work. I didn't follow him. I knew who he was because the name and the shows, TV shows he was guest starred in and other stuff that he had done, but I never really followed him from the very beginning. I followed him during the last day of his life. Heard he had cancer. I heard about his glass eye. I heard about all that stuff, but I can't really say with a straight face that I actually followed the guy because it wasn't my time. I followed him during the last days of his time, and one of the most impressive things about him is of his singing and tap dancing. He was a good tap dancer, and how he commanded the screen. So I'll always remember that from him. With that being said, I remember, which I don't really like. I'll tell you right now, I don't like those tributes shows they do where Sammy Davis Jr. sitting at the table listening to music, and I'm like, we really need to do this? Can the man, have his? I know he's dying. But do we have to make it sound like? Do we have to put that on a pedestal or put that on the stage? And that always really bothered me. I guess he didn't mind, but I always had the problem with that. But Sammy Davis Jr. Passed away no sooner after that, and I remember my mom just crying, my grandmother crying, and said we lost a legend. That I have to agree. Hollywood did lost a legend. For my mom at that time, there was a couple of people who she followed. Judy Garland, she told me about her. She told me about Marvin Gaye. She was definitely heartbroken to see Lucille Ball died, and that was a story that plugged headlines for quite some time because she was sick and she was going in and out of hospital for operations. She even joked about it while she was being put under, and then one day there was in the news that they said that she actually passed away. It was very, very sad because I love Lucy. I thought she was the funniest woman in the business. Sad that to hear a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that they had to go through, but it was one of my favorite classic black and white shows, and in color if you guys prefer. But it was one of the shows that I actually did watch. The one though in during that time that impacted me like a ton of bricks though, if you were a kid growing up with his work, was Jim Henson. Jim Henson struck me hard. I know who Jim Henson was. Even though I was a kid, I know the name Jim Henson because most of his work has his name on it, like Jim Henson's Muppet Babies. He was responsible for a lot of the Muppets and Sesame Streets. I even seen his face on some of the stuff, so it was no surprise who Jim Henson was. And so when Sammy Davis Jr. died, I didn't feel the impact like my mom, but I felt it when when Jim Henson died, and I was like, what? And I was so sad as a kid. I was so sad to hear him passing away that I didn't watch the Muppet Babies ever again. It took me pretty much close to my preteens to go back to memory lane and watch the Muppet Babies. But once he died, I felt that the Muppet Babies died with him. That's how much pain I was going through because he was such a big, iconic figure in my early childhood that to see him gone, it just led me to a state of depression. I was like very, very sad. I didn't want to watch anything that was Muppet Related because one of my heroes died. It was one of the biggest things, biggest shockers that I ever felt. And we expected, this is something the news have said, we expected Sammy Davis Jr. because we knew about his cancer situation. we didn't expect Jim Henson to. We didn't expect to lose Jim Henson. From what I understand, he died of pneumonia. Which I was at that time. I heard about it. I didn't know you could die from it. As a kid, I said, "You can die from pneumonia." This is one of the main reasons why my mom, actually my grandmother, was very, very strict on me and my brother to go outside with no proper clothing on. You go outside in the rain, you better have an umbrella and a coat and a hat. You don't go out there, you're gonna catch pneumonia. Dry up quickly, you're gonna catch pneumonia. Now I know why, because of what happened. Jim and I always been very cautious about that about that name, because I can see just how why my grandmother would constantly remind. But it was one of those big shockers. Another shocker was pretty much just a few years ago. And this is, I mean, pretty much the same scenario, which is kind of crazy. This was the same scenario. Mia Fawcett was announced that she passed away. We expected her death. She was struggling with cancer for a while. And then, no thing, because I was in college when this happened, we got text messages. Everybody from the college campus got text messages saying that Michael Jackson passed away. And we was like, this got to be some kind of joke. But after the text messages kept coming in, we saying, I don't think this is a joke. And when we got out of the college campus, we immediately turned to the radio station, and every radio station on New York, from rock and roll to oldies but goodies, was just playing Michael Jackson songs. And I'm like, this gotta be true. And it was just a stunner. No one saw that coming. No one saw that coming. He was 50 years old, and we seen some of the pictures that they had from their sports radio was talking about it. It was just a complete shocker that his life ended the way it is, and it's still a big shocker that his life ended the way it is. So that was one of the biggest shocks that I that I had to experience. Another shocker was actually Whitney Houston passing away in the way she did. I did a video on that, and I was saddened. I found out late. I was about to close up my computer, head on back home or where I was living at, and before I went on, I looked at my video ticker, because I have like a news update feed on the side of my computer. And I'm staring at it, and I see Whitney Houston's name, and it says Whitney Houston dead. I'm like, what? And I just immediately turned back on my computer and started to read through it. It just broke me. It just really broke me. And I had made a video on that, and I didn't want to do the video. I mean, I really didn't want to do the video, but it was just one of those female singers that I actually had an attachment to, and there she goes. And the way that she died, it's just very, very sad. It was very, very sad. I know she had a lot of problems. I know a lot of people want to blame Bobby Brown for it, but in reality, she had battling through addiction, and sadly, the addiction won. It's very, very tragic. But again, it was one of those things that, even though when you hear it, you still just can't believe it. I still can't believe it to this day. Paul Walker, the person who got his fame from Fast and Furious, it was a shock, especially how he died. I think people were more shocked on how he has went, because he died drag racing pretty much, and that was just something I just couldn't believe. Or in this case, going too fast on the road with a very, very dangerous car. It was something that I was stunned. I was very, very surprised to hear, and that was something that a lot of people just could not fathom. It just could not. He died from what? He made all those Fast and the Furious movies. How can he die from this? And for what I understand, they did complete the movie. They did leaked out that he's gonna have a happy ending. I think his brother, who I think looked just like him, has completed most of his scenes. So hopefully that will work out. But I don't know if they're gonna make an 8th one after that. They were signed to make a 7th one, so maybe they ended, maybe not. It really all depends. But one thing is definitely sure, it had an impact on that cast. Then Diesel was heartbroken. A lot of cast members were heartbroken. I seen videos of them crying as they went to the very site, the very area where the crash took place. It was one of those big things. Robin Williams, I was stunned. I don't even know what to say. I was stunned. I didn't know he was going through his own personal demons as bad as it was revealed. And finding out during the morning time going to work, seeing the newspapers, I was just shocked beyond belief. We lost a great comedian at that time. It was one of those great comedians that really, honestly, we'll never see again. That's how good he was. Um, I don't know what's else to say about that, but I think that the one thing I think people, and I said this before, and I said it, a lot of people said it. The one thing we get out of this, and the one thing everybody should get out of that, is depression hits anyone, no matter how rich, how poor, or how much you think they should, or what class they are. Depression is not something to be taken lightly, or something you're taking as simply as, say, someone just being sad, get over with. But one thing I will say, he is definitely one of the comedians that will be missed, and still the impact of his death is still being felt in Hollywood today. He has a couple movies going to come out. I know Night in the Museum Part 3 is due out this holiday season. Maybe take a look at that. But yeah, he's definitely going to be missed in many ways than one. All right, enough of that. Enough of all the death, because I don't want to leave a depressing note. Um, I'm going to talk about the greatest moments in entertainment history. Some of the things that I have followed over the years, some of the things that impacted the entertainment world in such a big way that we still feel the impact today. All right, let's start with the movies, and or may I say, the three Ds. And in case you're wondering what I mean by the three Ds, I mean the three directors that made a very strong impact in Hollywood, that pretty much reshape how we look at films, reshape what kind of films comes out at a particular season, and just basically have proven that you can make a memorable artsy film that will withstand the test of time. I'm referring to Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas. These are the three guys who really came at the exact right time, at the right moment when Hollywood desperately needed something new and fresh. Um, to talk about Hollywood in the 70s is pretty much to talk about the lowest point in Hollywood in the 70s. Hollywood was on the verge of bankruptcy. Movies was on the verge of extinction thanks to television and new source of entertainment. The studio wasn't as big as it used to. A lot of studios was closing down or merging with bigger studios, and the bridge for creativity during that time was very, very narrow. It was not easy to bring something new to Hollywood, especially when it requires a great risk. And depending on what kind of director, or the risk was even greater. George Lucas had a great risk with Star Wars. Francis Ford Coppola had a great risk with The Godfather. And Steven Spielberg had a great risk of bringing his creativity out in the forefront with Jaws and Close Encounter of the Third Kind. These directors have not only proven that you can be creative and bring something new that everybody wants, but they've really done a lot of things that I think people doesn't give them credit for. Let's start with George Lucas. George Lucas, to me, really brought the birth of the Phantom in all of us. He really had made it cool to actually like sci-fi again when sci-fi was on the verge of death. He literally saved the sci-fi genre because he took something that wasn't really original. If you look at Star Wars, all in their sequels, there is an element borrowed from some of the old B-rated films of yesteryear. Even Indiana Jones with Spielberg, you can actually say that he actually changed it up a bit with his films. And what George Lucas did was he not only reinvented the wheel, but he actually had pretty much shown Hollywood that you can bring a certain genre that was considered to be a fad, make it new, and make it where the point where people not only will love to see this film, but actually will care about the characters in the film. The Star Wars is a big achievement where it had every opportunity to fail and almost did fail in many shapes that I don't think people realize. Um, Without saying any further, guys, I want you to look up YouTube a little bit and look at the documentary of Star Wars, and it really says a lot about what Lucas was going through, what the actors was going through, and how he really wasn't given a chance to succeed. In fact, if it wasn't for word of mouth and people hungry for something new, the film probably would have just been in theaters and would have left theaters, and that's it. But not only did it succeed, it sparked two other sequels that people also love, and it's considered to be one of the greatest trilogies of all time, if not the greatest trilogy of all time. But most importantly is that it saved sci-fi. The Star Trek movies and even the other stuff that happened within Star Trek owes a great deal of debt to Star Wars. I know a lot of Star Trek or Trekkies don't want to hear it. I myself, as a Star Trek fan, it's hard. It's a bitter pill to swallow. But let's be realistic. Star Wars opened the door for new sci-fi adventures to be seen, and Star Trek is one of the big things because Star Trek was dormant for a long time before Star Wars was released, and then after that, we saw there was a need for Star Trek. So yes, it saved the sci-fi genre, and you can say a lot about what you want to say about the prequels. The one thing you cannot say is that at that time, George Lucas had a vision. He had an idea, and he was very creative with that idea. Even though he didn't get always his way with the budget and everything, what he did gave us was still enough to pretty much go back again and again and watch those films without ever worry about getting bored. That's how good he was. And then you got Francis Ford Coppola. Now, Francis Ford Coppola's Godfather film is pretty much his masterpiece, his grand achievement, in my opinion. He got a resume that is very long. He made a lot of good films. He made not some that's not so good, of course. But this is a film that no matter what generation you have grown up with, you have seen this film once, and it is a film that you will pretty much will go back to again and again. This film had a lot of history to it. This film was not really meant to be a drama film. It was not meant to be artsy. Paramount Pictures actually wanted it to be in a modern time. They didn't want it to go back into the time that film actually had. They wanted to be in the 70s, and the characters be in the 70s. They wanted to be more action and more pretty much like that typical stereotypical mobster films that you would have seen during the 50s and 60s, and even the 30s and 40s. Francis Ford Coppola didn't do that. There was a lot of stuff he had implemented in this movie that is relatable, and the key word about this is relatable. A lot of Italians have actually caught the little Easter eggs that he has done. A lot of stuff that is tradition in Italian culture, including the foods, into how they treat their families. It's a whole lot of stuff in that film that when you look back at it, they said, yeah, there's a lot of relatable stuff in this film. There was a lot of problem with this movie, and it's not just creating the controversy with the actors, with Al Pacino almost getting fired, but there was also putting their lives on the line because a lot of people who had ties with the mob also didn't want this film done, and actually did a lot of intimidation factors to make sure that the film is not done. There's a whole more story to meet the eye than has been told or has been or yet to be told by some of the directors, the producers, and the actors. But if you look at some of the documentaries about it, relating to it, it is pretty evident that this film, a lot of people put their lives on the line to get this film done. As the end result, we have one of the greatest classic dramas ever put into screen. And to me, even though to this day, ironically, Godfather Part 2 is still considered by many movie experts to be the best film because it was nominated for, it was the only one in sequel to nominated for an Academy Award. I consider the first one the one I go back to the most because the first one is just so memorable. So many actors in the film that did a great job. It's just a perfect film for me to constantly go back to. Of course, we're gonna have a lot of debate on that, but here's the thing that really also you gotta take a look at. Arts horror films, and I consider this an artsy film in the sense that it is more drama than action. There is action there, but there's a whole lot of more elements to this film, elements that many people, um, people between the ages of 18 to 25, or even within the early 30 range, would stay away from. They don't look at these kind of films and say, "I want to spend my time in theaters to watch this film." People from pretty much any demographic, reception of children, of course, have watched this film and said, "Yeah, I want to watch this again." Recites some of the greatest scenes in this film, so it's done its work, and it's proven that you can make a drama film like this and have such a staying power, such a memorable power, that people will actually continue to recite the film, even though the film is already 50 years old and counting. That's how strong this film has gotten, and the fact that this came out in the 70s and still people talk about it today says a lot about it. Francis Ford Coppola proved you can make a drama film and be just as memorable as some of the action films that we have seen during that particular time, especially what we're seeing now. I guarantee you, there's a lot of films that you've seen, but you will not remember after a year or probably after next month. And this is a film that proves that if you make a great film, a film that people is attached to, it will forever be on everyone's mind from next generation to generation. And then there's the great Steven Spielberg. I put great there for a lot of reasons. Steven Spielberg is one of the very few directors who actually reinvent himself. He became a blockbuster director with a lot of action, some of film with special effects, to a bio director with a lot of drama films, a lot of films that I will recommend hands down, that pretty much withstand his longevity. But he's also known for another thing that I think people of this generation needs to be reminded a little bit. Steven Spielberg is the father of the summer blockbuster. We wouldn't have that term if it wasn't for Steven Spielberg. A lot of films he came out with were mega hits, and he pretty much set the tone for that. E.T. set the tone for him to have his own production studio called Oblong Entertainment, which has the E.T. symbol on it, which I still think exists, but not in the big way as it used to be, because he have helped co-found DreamWorks Pictures. Now, how much he's have control of DreamWorks Pictures, I really don't know. For what I understand, that he really doesn't have much say as he used to, but he really did a lot for Hollywood, and Hollywood owes him a lot as well for what he has done. Close Encounter of the Third Kind, a lot of people love that film. Everybody knows what Jaws have done. Jaws was considered to be a very scary film at that time. It really got people afraid of the water, and he done it with almost no help in terms of the special effects. And that says a lot about how he was able to work around his shortcomings with that film and still give us one of the films that's considered to be one of the scariest films that came out during that time. And then you had the mega hit E.T. And of course we also have the films that many people consider to be one of his best dramatic roles. The Color Purple, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, the film that came out not too recent, Lincoln. His list goes on, and he's the kind of guy who is very humble at some of the stuff that he does. He admits some of his flaws, and he also brings out criticism for where the movies are going right now. Keep in mind, this is the guy who pretty much set the blueprint for the summer blockbusters. When you look at summer blockbusters, you're not looking at anything dramatic. You're looking at films that's going to explode, a lot of special effects, a lot of films that's going to be catered towards the young audience. And Spielberg has a lot of say into it. It also set the tone of what films will be appropriate to come out at what specific time. As we approach October, you know there's going to be a lot of films that will be geared towards the Academy. So do expect a lot of family or dramatic films geared towards that. We also have what they call the January dumping ground, and leading right up to the summer box office. And although things have changed a little bit, the blueprint pretty much remained the same, and he has a lot of play in it. I hope, as we leave into the next topic, that they take heed of what Steven Spielberg have said about the way is implode. I want to throw that in, that he made it very clear that it's reaching its equilibrium, and if they're not careful, they may go overboard. In fact, I'm not surprised if they already have gone overboard. But the point is that Steven Spielberg, to this day, out of all directors, I feel that he withstand them all because he continues to reinvent himself, continue to bring out films that are as good quality. There's only, in my experience watching his films, there's only one film that is my least favorite film, and there's a film that people forgot he actually made, and that's Always. And I will talk about that in a future video with a friend of mine because we're going to do a special on that. But Always is a one film that I think is the only film that I think is forgotten. Even when people actually pull on his resume, they seem to forget to put Always into that. And there's an actual legitimate reason to it. But after that, if you look at his resume, there's hardly a bad film in there. There's hardly a film that you say, I can't believe he did it. Even with Jurassic Park, I think people don't like Jurassic Park too much. There's not a film that will be pretty much be put in the Razzies, if you get my drift. So there you go with that. So those are the 3Ds to me that really change the way people look at Hollywood films and how Hollywood distribute these films throughout the course of the year. I'm not done with movies yet. I already talked about the movies that I have said. I'm going to talk about some of the films that people continue to talk about as groundbreaking films, at least in my era. A lot of people talk about Citizen Kane. Sorry guys, I'm going to be realistic here. I haven't seen it, so I don't know what that film is. But what I do know is that people always constantly debate whether this is the greatest film of all time. I always have a saying is, it may be the greatest film of that decade. As for the greatest film of all time, period, I will have to look at all the films that I have seen and then see for myself what kind of film is it. From what I understand, it's a great film, but I gotta see it for myself to fully understand what the big hype is before giving a final conclusion. What I can do is give my feelings on the films that were groundbreaking that I know I saw, and then talk about it. One of the most groundbreaking films to me, I'm going to take from each generation that I saw, was one, Rocky. Rocky to me came out at the exact right time. It really solidified Sylvester Stallone as not only a good actor, but a good screenwriter. I mean, he wrote that thing, and even though he didn't direct it, his writing and his dedication and his love for this character is written all over the place with his acting, as well as the way he wrote this character. And this is a film that, to this day, I'm surprised won Best Picture. I was very stunned, especially with some of the other films that came out that year. Many people have still debate whether if Raging Bull would have came out at the same time as Rocky, would it still won for Best Picture? I don't know. But to say that, because they didn't came out at the same time. But it is a very interesting thing. But to me, it set the tone for a lot. It really jump-started Sylvester Stallone's career, which, let's be honest, if you look at some of the films he came out before Rocky, it wasn't that spectacular. E.T., of course, is one of the groundbreaking family films that came out. This is a movie, oh man, that even made the toughest critics, because a lot of critics came in here expecting to hate this film, and even the most harshest critics, who doesn't even smile at some of these films, end up crying doing that last act. I mean, I don't think anybody have left that film in tears. It was just such an emotional roller coaster ride with that movie, and I think they even cried some more when the ending finally climaxed. It was one of the great films, and many people still to this day felt that E.T. should have won for Best Picture. I felt that when I saw what it was up against, it was pretty clear that Gandhi was going to win all the awards, while E.T. was going to get all the money. So it was just no way possible that I thought they was going to do. Another film, another Steven Spielberg film, no matter, was also groundbreaking. Pretty much one of the films that is groundbreaking for a different reason is Schindler's List. And I say, if you haven't seen this film, I don't know what you're waiting for. This is a great, great movie. It is his crowning achievement. This is his equilibrium here. You can't go any higher than what he did with Schindler's List. To me, that is a film that deserves every award have gotten. It was well written, well directed, well acted, and it is a film that not only that was groundbreaking for Steven Spielberg, because that did finally give him the award for Best Director and Best Picture. This is also a film that, if shown on certain television channels, they will show it in its original format with only very few commercials. That is not. It's very, very rare you see television, whether it's on cable or on free TV, that they will show a film just the way it is, no editing, no blinking out any curses. They show it just the way it is, with just one or two commercial breaks in between. And I applaud them for that, because this is a film that doesn't need to be edited. It needs to be seen the way it is. This is a very hard film. I know a lot of people who have seen this film had to leave the building, because the theater, because they just couldn't take it. A lot of bad memories have come from that, so you gotta understand that. And it is one of those things that it was so realistic. I was even stunned that he did it in black and white, but it really brought for some strange reason, it brought more realism to what Steven Spielberg was trying to present on the screen. And Steven Spielberg did not think, and when he released his film, he commented that he did not think this film was going to make any money whatsoever. He felt this was going to bomb, and not only it didn't bomb, it pretty much was a mega hit at that year, and it just basically went right straight to the awards. So kudos to him. It is one of his great films, and I was honored to have the privilege to watch this film when I did. Another groundbreaking movie, and it's done also for a different reason, is Gladiator. Now I know what you're saying. Gladiator is not that groundbreaking. Actually, it is, because I'll explain why. Gladiator came out. Gladiator is a film that won, I think, 4 awards, including Best Picture. This film came out at a month where nobody thinks of an award film to come out this month. And that was, it came out during January. I remember seeing this movie, and I remember the first promotional spots they had. It had Kid Rock's music in it. It didn't had nothing that was dramatic. So when I heard the music, I said, all right, well, maybe one of those films that's a hybrid. But when I saw the film, I was surprised at how different the film was to the commercials that were showing on TV. The crowd was into it. The film was very good. I actually like it. I know there are certain people who said this film was overrated. I disagree. I thought this film was well written and well made, and I thought, hey, I was kind of glad I seen it. It was actually pretty good. But I never thought in a million years, and especially a lot of people who saw this film, that this film will still have such a holding power with the critics, that it actually carried all the way from January to the awards ceremonies of the following year. It was just wow. There's not too many films you can say that actually came out in January, at least in my time period, that stayed in critics' minds, that it actually reached the committee, and the committee said, yeah, this is the best film of the year, we got to give it to it. That's almost a feat that I really, really was stunned about. Another moment in the movie history is my two favorite critics, the late great Siskel and Ebert. They have done a service to a film that or documentary that was, let's be honest, was screwed out of the Academy Awards on purpose, and they have brought it to the attention of everybody, to the point where some changes was made in the Academy Award selection of documentaries, and a great deal was owed to Cisco and Eva bringing that to everyone's attention. They was very heated about it. They was very angry about it, and because they knew that this was a screw job that the Academy was doing, and they have actually made it their business to let people know that this was a screw job that the Academy was doing. So that was one of the great moments in terms of recognizing these guys are critics. Their job is pretty much they didn't have to do this. Let's put that right there. They didn't have to. Their job is being movie critics. Their job is to review a movie, give their own opinion, and give a final result, whether it's 2 thumbs up or a couple of stars if you follow them on their news articles. So them doing what they did and going the extra mile and acknowledging, hey, this film was robbed. This is why, and continue to follow up on that till something was done. That's something that it earned me. I found new respect for them because yeah, these guys are critics, but they're not as snobbish as some of the other critics who will just say something and make you feel like that you don't know what you're talking about. These guys had a love and a passion, and even though you disagree with them, they were always at least you can respect their opinion because they're all genuine opinions through and through. Um, Another great moment happens to be Titanic, and I'm not a fan of this movie. I mean, right now, I thought this film was way overrated um, in a large degree. But I will say this though: a film that was supposed to fail not only made its money, but it actually took Star Wars off its pedestal. Star Wars was the number one grossing film of all time, and here comes Titanic, and that ended the streak right there. And the only film that actually broke Titanic was another film that this director James Cameron made, and that was Avatar, which, by the way, 2 and 3 is now in production. So if anybody who's a fan of Avatar, go have some fun with that. There is also a television film. If you guys recognize the Anne Frank TV movie, it is considered to be the best TV movie that ever came out on TV, and that says a lot considering that it's much harder to get good ratings for a made for television film than it is for an actual film. And this film not only did a great job of capturing what was translated in Anne Frank's diary, but they actually went the extra mile and really gives you the actual last days of her life leading to that. Um, Give the writers credit; they didn't sugarcoat anything at all. It's a very powerful, very sad film, but I feel it's one of the best ones that actually was made, and that's saying a lot considering how many Anne Frank movies that came out right after this one. The same child actress who played Anne Frank also played in another um, Holocaust film with Robin Williams. I believe the movie is called Jack the Liar. So if you've seen that, you know which actor I'm talking about. But this was a very powerful film, and it's a film that even gotten praises from the families of the late child. So for those who want to know, this is something that many people have really took notice very quickly. So that's a great accomplishment from there. Um, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, this is also a great moment. Not just for not anything for an awards or anything, but uh, this was to me. I'm keeping it on to me. Was a great film if you was a youth because this was the only time that I can actually remember that I went to a theater and the whole entire seats was filled with children. Everyone from my age group went to see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we had a blast. We was cheering, we was booing the bad guys. We just had fun with this movie, and you will never probably see this again because of the way films are now and how the new regulations are right now. But at that time, when that movie came out, every kid made their business to see this film. For kids, for nostalgia reasons, if you grew up with this film, you enjoyed it, you had fun with it, and there is no way in the world you can actually sit there and tell me otherwise because you'd be lying, especially when you've seen this film. I can't say anything about the other two. The parents pretty much ruined that experience for a lot of people. But that one film, for anything else, it was cheap, it was stupid, it was crazy, but it was fun. Still fun to watch. And for a kid's perspective, I had a lot of great memories with that one. And another crowning achievement, which I think people have actually forgot this film came out, and I believe it's still you can actually get it on DVD now. I'm actually looking for it myself. Is the film called Bugsy Malone. And this is a film that's not only a great achievement in Hollywood, but will never be done again. Ever. You will never see a film like this done again. This film was released in the 70s. It stars, the cast is all entirely of children. Every last actor, actress were kids. The oldest one, I believe, was Jodie Foster, because she was in this film, and she was one of the biggest child stars in the 70s at that time. But this movie was every kid's dream come true. Um, I'm trying to avoid doing a review on this film because I actually want to talk about this later on in the upcoming flashback review. But needless to say, this film is supposed to be child-friendly gangster film because it's rated G. There's no real violence in there unless you want to say that throwing pie cusses all over the place is violent. But this film had everything that a kid actually wanted. When I saw the film and they had like these bicycle type cars, and you had these Tommy gun pie shooters, it was like, yes, I need to see this film. And I did saw online the documentary behind that film, which was even more fascinating. But it is a movie that, if you ever wonder why, if you ever wish there was a film just for us kids to enjoy, with nothing but kids actors in it, Bugsy Malone is the film I recommend you look for. It was nominated for a couple of Golden Globes. It's a musical, by the way, which, by the way, the kids don't sing. They actually, their voices is dub. But it is a film that, I think Mark Macchio, the guy who played Charles and Charles and Happy Days, he was in that film. He was one of the main stars. He played Bugsy. He got his start from there as well. It's a film that deserves to be in the museum because there's no way in the world that director had control of all those children. And the fact that you got that film done, and actually in the documentary, in the last scene, that was no script for that. He just told the kids to have fun and just throw those pies all over the place, and they just got it on screen. And it's like, that's the ultimate pie fight right there in that film. But this film deserves to be in the Institute of Filmmaking because this film is such a one of a kind film, and it will never be matched by anything ever, ever again. You will never see a director go through that. 1,000 plus children in one studio, and you have to direct each one of them without any problems. Trust me, that's something that no director direct. Some directors have a hard time with just one child actor. Imagine thousands of them in the same room. That's unheard of. But this director pulled it off. He managed to pull it off, and at the end, he put a classic masterpiece, a one of a kind masterpiece, that I recommend everybody would see just once. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. I talked about Hollywood. I talked about that. What else? Is there anything else that actually caught my attention? Anything else that um, actually have that catch my memory? Well, the Whitney Houston national anthem in the football game was one of them. It was a big thing. We was on Desert Storm, and she sang the national anthem. It was something that is still considered one of her greatest hits, and is actually been redistributed and distributed for people to have, and it's still one of the hot sellers. That's how good she sung the national anthem. She was up and coming. She had full of energy, and when she sung it, it was just perfect. In a day that many of the singers, and I say that with sadness, don't even know some of the lines of the national anthem. It was nice to see that one who was original, who was genuine, who had a great voice, sung it with class and dignity, and in a time that we needed that the most when we was at war in Iraq the first time. So that was something of a crowning achievement, not only for Whitney Houston, but just for the country abroad when she sung that national anthem. It was very big. One of the big tragedies that I actually have seen was, of course, Cosell going on the radio and announcing John Lennon's death. It was something that, that shook everyone by surprise. It was actually heard by sports radio first, not by anything else, and it was something that was a big shocker. And later on, of course, they found out more. This is something that my mom told me about. Looked it up in the history of sports. It's something that's crazy. Um, Great moments in sports, of course, is especially if you're a New Yorker. That Game Six against the Mets and Red Sox was unbelievable. The play that actually changed everything in that whole entire series. Looked like the Mets was going to lose that series, and then that ball went right through Buckner's leg. I hope that at least that's what his name is. I'm pretty sure. And the Mets won, and then they won the series, coming from behind no less, to win the 1986 World Series. Again, it was very, very big. Yankees win their first championship in God knows how long. That was a big achievement for New York as well. After especially being down 2 games to none against Atlanta, that was a big thing for me. Um, we had of course, the Buffalo situation where they pretty much the first team that went to the Super Bowl 4 times in a row and lost all 4 times. That was a big thing in history as well, especially the first one where they should have won against the Giants. Um, the Arthur Ashe announcing he had AIDS was a very, very tough one. Um, that was a very one that broke my teacher's heart. A lot of teachers in my school was crying after hearing that. So that was something that was very big, uh, in depth. But the one thing, if you want to go with boxing, and I might as well talk about boxing for a second here. I think the biggest thing about this, the one that we constantly talked about, my family, was that Mike Tyson Buster Douglas fight. Um, I am very mixed on that fight. I thought that there was some fishy stuff going on. I thought they gave Tyson a more faster count than they did his opponent, but it was very big because Tyson, as a boxer in his young age, was just so vicious. I mean, we never seen anything like him coming up in that time. He was the icon of boxing at that time. He was pretty much the face of boxing. He basically knocked you out after one, maybe two, possibly 3 rounds. And there was always a saying that you don't want to leave your chair because if you leave your chair, you might miss the whole match, and that was so true. Friend of mine's, he had it on his cable box, and he went to get a drink of beer, which we wasn't supposed to at that age, but it was the 80s. He came back, the match was already over. He knocked him out in 13 seconds, and he was upset. He was mad. People was actually more upset the fact the match didn't go. He didn't weigh out the match longer than him winning the match. But that was the big thing. And then you have Buster Douglas, who just took him to the limit, and that was the whole thing. He took him to the limit. Tyson was not used to going to the limit and winning. That was something that was unheard. I was like, what? Tyson actually lost? I can't believe this. Made the news and everything. It was like big shocking news. I didn't see that much shock about a person losing the title since Hogan lost to the Giant in a rigged wrestling match, and that was not considered a very well respectable event. But they did telecast that, so that was a very big thing. Um, I have to say for baseball in terms of the shocking news, not I can't say shocking news, but news that really shook baseball to the point where now they're trying to make up for their mistakes, their mishap. Of course, I'm talking about the steroid scandal, and it really became a serious issue when players started dying. It was something that started happening, and it happened at an alarming rate. And the one thing WFAN said at the time, they actually said they did if they did a poll, or maybe they say they would do a poll, and if you asked them honestly without being actually being prosecuted by anybody, um, even if it's a risk of your life, would you still take steroids? And he said a majority of the players, not just in baseball but abroad, will say yes, they would, because it's that important to stay on top. It's that important for them financially that they be the best and get that edge over their players. now is deemed inappropriate, and now you have a situation where, and this has been told by a lot of radio stations that and sports analysis that this may be a very, very, very uncomfortable era in terms of Hall of Fames because a lot of players are going to be coming up for Hall of Fame and they may get shot down because of their involvement with steroids. Even those that was accused but never was proven to taking steroids, which bothers me greatly because if you don't have any evidence and you go on simply he say, that's not right. But they may also too face the jeopardy of not being Hall of Fame. Mike Piazza comes to that when talking about that. So that's just something that baseball have had and has really tarnished them within the past 10 years. And a lot of this had to do with the fact that they had went on strike. They lost a huge number of fan base, and they needed. And to them, a lot of stuff they did was to try and push baseball back into the favoring eye again. So that was the big thing about that. Other than that, it has had a very, very, very bumpy road with that, with players being caught with steroids. A-Rod, of course, with his suspension. So it left a lot of stain in baseball that, unfortunately, is going to affect a lot of players when they retire going forward. You wish that wasn't the case, but right now, with the way the writers feel about steroids use and everything else, it wouldn't be surprised that someone who you know should be a sure thing first ballot may not be put there until at least the veteran community may actually step in, and that's very hard to do. I mean, that's very hard for those players to swallow. Another moment, since I spoke about wrestling, WrestleMania 3 was a big moment. WrestleMania 3 is not my favorite WrestleMania. It's not a terrible WrestleMania, don't get me wrong. It's just not my favorite. I think it was a little bit overhyped after I finally saw it with my friend of mine. Let me borrow his WrestleMania tape for the first time. And I saw just how they were within the mission and stuff. It's a whole different ball game now. Of course, it's not the same WrestleMania that we see here, and that's not actually a good thing either. But with this WrestleMania, it was special because one, it had a record-setting crowd watching wrestling, and two, it moved wrestling forward, or at least the WWE forward. They wouldn't be where they are without that WrestleMania. WrestleMania proved that you can tap into the market both internationally and globally. There was a big thing for pay-per-views at the time, and Vince McMahon was one of the founding fathers of that, and he utilized pay-per-view to its advantage to gain more revenue. And to me, it's just one of those WrestleManias that really said this is the Super Bowl of wrestling. If you look at the first two WrestleManias, it doesn't have nearly the much at this one did, and this one really was. It showed you the biggest scale. Not to say that WrestleMania 2 is bad. WrestleMania 2 is actually pretty good. I actually love WrestleMania 2. I actually love that steel cage match between him and King Kong Bundy with Amira actually giving commentary. So don't think I'm knocking the other two WrestleMania. I truly do love WrestleMania 2, but WrestleMania 3 was the staple, the first step into the other wrestling event above. This is the truth. When you see WrestleMania, that is the season finale, and that's also the season premiere of the WWE in terms of the next step and next step in their wrestling storylines. Everything pretty much comes ahead, and everything also begins with that WrestleMania, and WrestleMania 3 is a big thing on that. Again, where do I also go from here? It's a whole lot of stuff that affected me big time. We are the world, we are the children. This is one of the most weirdest. I can't say weird song because the song is actually good. I actually love the song. But the video was weird, and it's really because of Willie Nelson. I'm looking at Willie Nelson, and he's just. You have to look at that video, and you probably better understand where I'm coming from with it. It's a weird video. It's a video that you say, did he really just do that? I liked the song. Don't like the remake. I thought they didn't need to go that route again. I thought that was just why the first one is classy. You're not gonna top that. I don't even know if you can still get We Are the World. I believe you can download it on iTunes or Cloud, I believe, but I don't know if you can actually get it as a physical copy. I don't think they. I think they discontinue with it, or either that or Michael Jackson State still has it and not releasing it. Because I know he did a standalone one, so it makes me wonder if he actually owns the rights to that. But even if he does, he don't. It is a great song. It is one of the songs that I saw that all these great singers got together for a very very good cause. And speaking of that, getting together, we also had the East Coast All Star rappers and the West Coast All Star rappers getting together. We were on the same gang as is the West Coast All Stars. Um, you have also the East Coast All Stars talking about self-destruction, and the reason why these were two very important music is because gang violence was really on the rise in 19 in the last part of the 80s and the early 90s, and pretty much these rappers came together and said, "Hey, look, we gotta stop this. It's enough of that." And to me, in my opinion, this is where I consider the last great era of rap is because I don't think rap ever got back that flurry. Um, and in this generation, in fact, rap to me is almost comical the way they consider that as music. But those two all-star tracks were very very good, and I recommend for those who don't know what I'm talking about to look up in YouTube because I know it's in YouTube. I know it's there because I saw it not too long ago, and it's still up there because it's on a video channel. To type in "We're all in the same gang," and also type in self-destruction, and you see exactly what both sides is. This is before we had that East Coast West Coast garbage that was going on. They were both trying to come together and trying to stop the violence and bring awareness to the violence because it was exploding, and especially in New York, it was exploding. And to me, seeing that on free television was an accomplishment within itself. Um, Soul Train is definitely an accomplishment. Soul Train been on television a very long time. I don't know if it's on cable. From what I understand, I believe it's BET still plays some of the old episodes. I don't know if they have new episodes, but it was one of those shows that really lasted a lot longer than I expected. I was young. I did saw part the last of American Dance Stand. There was Solid Gold. But Soul Train was a little bit surprising for me because Soul Train was the one I couldn't stand, and it wasn't because it was bad. It was because my mom would interrupt my cartoons to watch Soul Train, and I couldn't really say no because she made me watch my shows all the way to that point. But there was always that one or two shows I wanted to see, and I couldn't see it. We didn't have a VCR back then. We had two black and white televisions, and we didn't dare touch our grandmother's black and white television. We did not mess with grandma's television at that time. So we technically only had one. And when Soul Train came on, we left it alone. That was my mom's. We don't touch it. We understood that Soul Train comes on this time. She's watching Soul Train no matter what. And that was a big thing over there in the household. So if anything, I just played with her records. She let me listen to music, so I had no loss, no foul. uh, I'm bringing back good memories here with that. But Soul Train was a very show that I grew up to appreciate, especially when they had the Soul Train Music Awards. I remember seeing the very first one. I know they still exist on BT. I haven't watched it since. I don't know how much they've changed over the years with that. But the Soul Train Music Awards was something that was brought out, and it was actually pretty good. It was actually a nice awards show. It was not one of those shows that you see on MTV. And speaking of MTV, that was also one of the biggest things. MTV did a big push. I Want My MTV videos was played mostly rock videos and stuff, but it was a very great accomplishment, and it breaks my heart that MTV is nothing like what it is now. They have not played any music. I don't know what's the deal. Might as well just change the name. What's the point of having MTV now? What's the point? Somebody asked me that. You're not gonna play music videos. What's the point? So it makes no sense. You got more reality TV than anything else. You might as well call that reality TV. Need a drink of water from that. But yeah, that's always what's bothered me. But at the '80s, MTV was the man. I mean, MTV was something that was constantly being pushed on us. It had a couple of good things that they did. I actually think the last great thing they did was Beavis and Butthead. But MTV was the show, was something that you watched for music videos at the time. Of course, they had competition after that. VH1 came along, other BET came along, so that pretty much changed the game a little bit. But MTV, you always remember being the first, and probably one of the most controversial because I know they didn't put a lot of other stuff on there that people was crying foul. But MTV, with their commercials, with that dumb astronaut, was something that is memorable in the 80s. It definitely is. Um, Timeless commercials. Growing up in my era, there's a couple good ones. I have to say the Max Headroom is the one that I always scratch my head because that was the one that actually got it made into an actual TV show that didn't even last a season. I don't even remember how many episodes it had. But Max Headroom is one I always say why. Why is this existing? Why is this here? Please tell me why. I need to know. I need something to explain and to something to make me justify me sitting here and making a fool of myself watching this show. I just didn't understand. But the commercials for it during their Pepsi run, I believe it was Pepsi, because Pepsi was the one that had more of the commercials than anything else. It was just weird and just I don't know out there. I think the only show that tried to mimic that was the Cavemen, and I was not a big fan of the Cavemen. I definitely hated that TV show, but that was always the commercial that stuck out for me in the '80s. Another show that stuck out to me, it was more in the '90s, but it is one of those things that um, it was very clever and ticked off a lot of people at the same time. It was clever because of how they promoted this product. And that's the Energizer Bunny. Still going, nothing outlasts the Energizer. And it became a running gag for a while until they finally just gave up on that and just became a commercial within itself. You know what I'm talking about? Because when you see a new show, you're thinking, "Oh, this is gonna be a great show. Oh man, I can't wait to see it." Still going, like, "Oh, you son of a bitch!" I mean, I actually wanted to look forward for that show. And one of the things that actually got everybody mad because we were sitting in the room. It was in my friend's house. We were sitting down, and we see these scuba divers going under, and they was like, it made it so epic, and it was like we just couldn't wait. Said, "Oh yeah, this is when is this coming on?" Next thing you know, you see this Energizer Burn, and everybody like, "Oh come on!" I think the complaints because I know it had to be a couple of people complaining about that. Finally got to them and decided to make an actual standard commercial. But when they did it like that, it was fun and clever because it came out of nowhere. You didn't know when it was coming. That was the whole thing. You just didn't know when that bunny was gonna pop up. That was the most clever marketing idea I have ever seen. But it did ticked off a lot of people who was actually saying, "Oh, I want to looking forward for the show," and they did it a lot with with them, especially with commercials. You'll be seeing a guy talking, and next thing you know, still going, nothing less energized. I said, "Oh man, they're just gonna keep doing this." And when they did the TV shows, still going, it was a very clever, very inventive marketing thing. Um, the cereals, I gotta give it to the Monster group. Count Chocula, Frankenberry, Boo Berry. Um, those are the cereals that my mom absolutely refused to give me. Mummy Yummy, I don't know if they had a commercial for Yummy Mummy. I haven't seen it. But I do know that Fruit Brute, I definitely know I didn't see that. Fruit Brute, I didn't even know it existed until Spill.com brought it up. So that's how forgettable that person was. But the Monster cereals was something that I always remember. I remember those. Captain Crunch because they had like they make it epic. Sometimes they have a two-part special with those. You have Lucky Charms. These were actually fun commercials. You had the Tricks Bunny, which I actually followed loyally because I actually wanted to know if he was going to get um, some tricks, which he finally did. It was actually amazing because people voted for that. People voted for him to get serious. And I remember seeing it. Like, thank God they gave him one series I can rest. And I think they ended the series after that because the joke was over. I mean, but my goodness, that silly rabbit tricks for kids was one of the things that really. It really was a rude move. I mean, come on, you don't have the cereal, give it to him. His face is on the box. You mean you can't have any? I'll tell you one of the commercials a lot of kids hated. Kicks. Um, no sugar or low sugar because there was sugar in it. No toys in the box. It was just a plain orange box. I thought Sunkist fruit drink made that. That's how plain that box was. The cereal was not bad, but it was still plain. And let's be honest, if you're a kid, you're putting sugar in there. You're gonna put more sugar in it than what it is. I looked at that box and said, I better have a box of cornflakes. This is colorful. I mean, granted, it's not much to say, but at least you get a better picture. I mean, Kix was just I just didn't get it. I mean, I really didn't. I mean, do they even make Kix anymore? That's the whole thing. I'm pretty sure they do. I haven't seen it in my supermarket, surprisingly. But that was one of the things that happened. Mr. Clean's jingle, always remember it. It's one of my favorite jingles. I actually have it on my computer. It's actually pretty damn good. And the commercial was good. And here's a funny tip here. It was only about 9 years ago that I realized that was actually based on a real guy who I believe passed away in 2006, I believe. But he looked just like that image in the bottle, Mr. Clean. Get rid of dirty grimes and grease in just a minute. That was one of the jingles. Then you had the I don't want to get the coffee names wrong. I believe it was I think it was Maxwell House that had that percolated coffee. I know people who drink Maxwell House or Folgers Crystal will correct me, but I'm pretty sure it's Maxwell House because that was the one with the big blue can that I couldn't open for my life depending on it, which my mom was very happy with because actually would not. Cause she drank me. I drank coffee when I was really young. I mean, really, really young. I drank that and drank Folgers Crystal, but that was always the coffee of choice in the house. And I remember that commercial was actually a pretty good commercial. Orville Redenbacher. I didn't eat his popcorn until it was late in my adulthood, but I always liked his commercials. I always loved his commercials. The Purdue guy, which I knew passed away in '97, I believe, '98. I gotta check the date now, but I know he passed away just shortly after he retired. The same thing with the guy who made the donuts. The representative who made the donuts retired, died a few months later. I said, my goodness, it just kept on working. But those were one of the biggest things that those commercials were actually classic commercials. I love when that guy came on and said, time to make the donuts. It was very, very good. It was actually very creative. And he was there in the 80s and to the late 90s. And I remember the retirement when he retired, and we gave out free coffee at that time. That's how big of a deal it was. That Snapple lady, I don't think anybody remember. She was the spokesperson for Snapple. She was the one that got fired and then rehired. I thought that was actually a gimmick play, but no, she actually really got fired, and they rehired her for a brief while. But she disappeared. I haven't seen her since. But it is one of those commercials that actually was actually fun to watch as well. Michael J. Fox made a couple commercials. He made a coffee commercial. I know that, drinking his first coffee. He also did Pepsi, I believe. I'm not too sure, but that was also one of the memorable commercials that he had. This commercial was actually as a PSA. It's still one of the memorable, most popular PSA out of all PSA, and that is, this is drugs. It's your brains on drug. Any questions? It's right straight to the point. None of the other stuff they did afterwards. I think the worst PSA, and I think parents did complain about it because it only was played a couple of times and they never played it again. It is a very scary and very disturbing commercial, which makes me think they went way too far showing that. But then again, I saw some of the Canadians PSA and I said, yeah, they're worse. But it was a commercial about a drug commercial. I think it was drugs. And you see this girl sitting down, and you see her facing the camera. Next thing you know, you see all this water filling up her room, and she's drowning in the room. And you're seeing this in the commercial, and it's like, what did we just watch? I mean, how did you put this in here? I mean, that's not helping me do drugs, but it frightened the hell out of me. It was just one of the disturbing commercials that they ever did for PSA, and it was showed a few more times, and then they stopped showing it. Obviously, parents said, "Yo, dude, what are you doing? I mean, this is ridiculous." Um, one of the commercials that almost got banned. And it was only showed at a certain time, which makes no sense. And that was the pumps. This was when the pump was first in style. They actually you pump. They had these sneakers that you tie, but you also pump it up to give a better grip on your shoes. At least that's what the premise is. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of stupid, to be honest with you. And the commercial, it was very very. I wouldn't say disturbing as much as, huh. So what are they saying? If you were regular sneakers, that this would happen to you. They had two bungee jumpers. One with the pumps, he pumped it up. The other one without the pumps, and they both dive. The one with the pump sneakers stayed on the cord. The other one didn't. Um, the FCC didn't take lightly to this. It actually made a deal with the people who was advertising it only show it at a certain time because they didn't want people to mimic what they was doing. And this was a time where the pumps were such expensive that wearing it in the streets at that time, you was had a high likelihood of getting robbed. But that was one of the things that happened. To me, was it an overreaction? Yeah, probably so. But to me, I just thought the sneaker was overrated to begin with. I didn't think the sneaker was all that high and dandy. But it did last a while, and it was one of those commercials that actually belonged the attention. So there you have it. Um, I guess that's pretty much it. That's all at the top of my head right now, Lisa. I can go on a little bit further than that, but then again, this will be a 3 hour long long uh, audio, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to make it that long. It's what it is, but you get the grip. A lot of stuff as I that I mentioned here really did had an impact on me a lot more than some more than others, but they still had an impact on me in many ways, and that was the main thing about it. When I look at memory lane as I'm speaking to you right now, um, I'm smiling because this was what impacted me in the 80s, as well as a lot of people who grew up in the 80s and now. This is something uh, that represent me for better and for worse. And it is something that I always love mentioning, especially towards the younger ones who will not have the privilege or even the fortune of not of not witnessing what we witnessed. It was a crazy time in the 80s. It was really was. A lot of the animations that we had, the Saturday morning cartoons that we have watched, the good and the bad throughout, the music that we had, the one hit wonders. It was a very crazy time, but a very fun time. I don't regret the 80s. It is something that I had a lot of good time with. There was a lot of bad times, of course, more on a personal matter, but the stuff that I brought out with me really kept me together for as much as possible during my childhood. And my childhood wasn't great. I became a movie fan in 1989, where it became my sanctuary, if you want to call it. To go to the movies, stay out of trouble, come home, go to sleep. That was it. Those are the big things that I actually remember a lot, especially some of the TV shows that were, in my opinion, classics within itself. The Cosby's, the Cheers, MASH, was my mom's, Benny Hills, a lot of stuff that I have watched over the years have really kept me really focused here in the head and anything else. And for those that time, I wouldn't trade it in for the world. Now, for this generation, the ones that's growing up in the 2000 on, even the late 90s on, they will have a different perspective of what they grew up with. They will have different memories for what they grew up, and that's cool too. I can't phantom what my grandmother thought about the 80s. She probably thought the 80s was garbage, and the 70s and 60s was her good times. That's what you're gonna expect from that. Same thing in person in the 80s. People in the 90s is not gonna get what we felt in the 80s because we grew up in the 80s. Most of our childhood was in the 80s. What we seen was mostly in the 80s. Kids who grew up in the 90s will have more of attachment to the stuff they grew up in the 90s. That's how it is. So when I brought up all that stuff, that's mostly because I grew up there. I grew up with that culture. I grew up with that, with these movies, and as well as just the music itself. And I don't regret it. This is what it is. This is what the '80s was. There's a lot of stuff that happened, both good and bad. But you know what? You take it, you look at it, you learn from it, and you move on, and you become a better person. Not just for yourself, but for your children as well. And for the most part, the entertainment that I've seen really was my distraction from a lot of stuff that I didn't want to be a part of or was put into due to personal circumstances. And the entertainment was my way out. And that's what entertainment really is. It's a way out. It's meant to distract you for the craziness that's in this world. This is something that is constantly told about through actors, actresses, people who report in the entertainment world. It's a distraction. We go to sports to be distracted from a lot of stuff and unwind. Sometimes sports are good for that, especially when we're in a very big crisis and we need to find something to keep our mind off that. 9/11 is a perfect example of that. We didn't have sports. We didn't have nothing in New York City for almost a month. And when we finally, baseball finally came on, we all embraced that game. We didn't care who was playing at that time. We embraced it. We wanted to see it, and it began for what it's worth. Excuse me. It gave us that distraction for that brief moment. The same thing with the First Iraq War and other big catastrophes. These entertainment, whether it's music, movies, sports, etc. These things are a good vehicle to just get away from it all and just forget about your worries and just have fun and entertain. That's what they're there for, to have fun and to be entertained. Um, and to me, that speaks a lot for me. Again, I became a movie buff just on 1989 because of a lot of stuff that was going on with me, and that was my escape. I paid at that time $5 to see a film. Sometimes I pay $5 to see a double feature. My double feature, I remember it as if it was right now. Was Honey I Shrunk the Kids, My Stepmother's an Alien. That was one of them. Then I had Indiana Jones and Star Trek. That was another one. I remember going to the movie theater at 9 o'clock in the evening to watch a sneak peek release, which I don't think they even do anymore, but you get a sneak preview of certain films. And one of my films that I saw a sneak preview of was Tremors. That was the film that I actually watched, and it's kind of funny because I actually ended up seeing two films that day, because the lady said go on ahead and watch the film, and then stayed in the theater and watched the other film, and it was a blast. It was fun. I don't regret it. So these were the good old days for me. These are my good old days. It may not be good for everyone. Don't get me wrong. I know that not everybody had that same privilege. So keep in mind, what for me in terms of entertainment reasons, this was my good old days. So when I look at that as my great accomplishment, besides the fact that I finally got my GED in 2006, and that's thanks to Harry Potter. But that's a whole different story for another day. But you get what I'm saying, guys. You get what I'm saying. That this is why I wanted to do this video as the season finale, because I wanted to tell you why I became, so infatuated with entertainment, the stars, as well as uh, this entertainment period. It doesn't have to be just categorized into one thing, because a lot of stuff have affected me. Right, or even to Broadway. I'm not even a Broadway buff, but there were some things that Broadway have done that affected me deeply, and they actually have gotten me to respect stage acting a lot more than what I used to when a kid. So, kudos to them as well. And with that, that's it, guys. That's all I got to say here. I actually went a lot longer than what I actually intended to, but again, when you're going down memory lane, that tends to happen. And there is no links to this video because this is not that type of audio video. This is just me reminiscing. And this is the last entertainment roundup of the year until January, and until we get the award season up, where I'll have a special edition with the Golden Globes as always, and talk about that as well as another thing I want to talk about in the awards within the award category that I will talk about later on down the road. But our official season premiere will return on January 2015, the second week of January, and we'll just pick up from where we left off from there. So, as always, I want to thank everyone who has listened to the Entertainment Roundup, especially these last 3 years. You guys are great. I really appreciate the support, even though if it's 5, 10, or sometimes 18, it doesn't matter. You guys took the time to at least listen to it, and that alone brings a smile to my face, and I want to thank all of you guys for that. There's going to be some changes in the Entertainment Roundup, of course. I am actually thinking about changing it. That's for the better, not for the worse. But for the most part, until next time, guys, thank you very much for supporting this. Thank you very much for supporting my videos. I really, really do appreciate it. And until next year, at least in this program, this is J77 saying take care, be safe, and I'll talk to you on January. Take care.